Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today I am thrilled to have a special guest joining me, a renowned Eisner Award-nominated comic author and historian, curator, and the executive director of the Small Press Expo. Please welcome Warren Bernard. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Great. I don't know about, but I'll take the rest.
The rest is just your name. That's great. No. I think people ask, like, how did you become aware of me? How did you how did I get on your radar? And I'm like, I'm observing, and I follow this thing. If someone piques my curiosity or what they're doing piques my curiosity, I want to know more. And I'm always super excited when people want to just step into the ring and chat with me for, half an hour or so. So it's really cool.
It is an honor, to say the least. Whatever it is I've been doing that caught your interest, I'm happy for it. And like I said, it's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you so much. And as we go into this sort of introductory portion, I'd like to start off with, a question of, like what sort of current stuff, and then sort of like in the past. I want to start off with the current stuff. We're recording this on, I'm going to date it. We're recording this on a Wednesday. So what's been like the highlight of your week so far, or a highlight of your summer thus far?
Ooh, the highlight of my summer so far. I did a sort of comics road trip about 6 weeks ago now, that I visited cartoon and comics friends up through Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, and then upstate New York, and visiting different people that I've met in the SPX community that have become really good friends with. So that was definitely the highlight, in no uncertain terms. There have been others. I just saw a great baseball game up in Philadelphia last Saturday night. The Phillies won 9-4, so home runs, drag bunts, which, who does drag bunts here in this third decade of the 21st century? So it was, anyway, I've got lots of cool stuff.
That's great. And I'm really trying to sort out how to do I call it the social trip. You did the sort of comic trip to the Eastern, like it's, I was recently, I want to say beginning or maybe pre-summer in New York, and it was like 5 people I was supposed to visit, and I visited none of them because I avoid train at all costs. So I was like, no, I'm just going to hang in my hotel and figure out where I'm going to go at while I'm up here. But definitely when you meet people, especially doing something like this or doing something where you're just encountering a lot of different people who do really cool things, you want to be able to cultivate and maintain those relationships. So FaceTime and connecting.
Well, yeah, but I don't consider it as sort of mechanical as that.
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of like, I meet these people. We find out that we've got many things in common. Some of it is due to age. Some of it is due to interest. Some of it is due to position. And so I don't view it quite that mechanical. It's much more organic than that, because there are lots of people that I've met through SPX that for whatever the reason is, either we didn't connect on some kind of level other than being at the show or what have you. But it's clear that when you establish, so actually doing SPX was the entry point. Yeah. And anything after there is just as organic as you going to a concert, meeting some people, or meeting someone in class at school, or someone at work that you become friends with. So it's just the ignition point. Sometimes the fire ignites and sometimes it doesn't. So there's, I just want to relate it that there's nothing different between doing it at SPX or doing it at any other job that's out there, or doing it at a concert or wherever it may be.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it gets muddied sometimes, where I crave that. I crave the thing that feels organic, like, hey, we're out there in the scene, or hey, I had you on the pod. And, I do another podcast outside of this where it's very different. And we cover movies and really get into the nerd minutia of movies.
Yeah, sure.
But not every one of these 600 plus interviews that I've done goes onto that podcast. It's very small group of like, okay, you get it. We can vibe on that.
Yeah, right.
It feels organic. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to have that connection. And when you do, it. It's like, oh yes, the person at the other side I know who you are, and we could talk about this for hours.
Absolutely. So, I said that I want to start off with the current. Now I want to go back a little bit. I want to, tap into sort of your involvement. Where does it start with Small Press Expo and the U.S. Library of Congress, United States Library of Congress? Like, can you share sort of your journey and like ultimately what led to your role as executive director of SPX?
Yeah, sure. So we'll start with the SPX side, and then I'll kind of put them all together.
Please.
Yeah, I live maybe a 5-7 minute walk from where SPX used to be held here in downtown Bethesda, and I had left my corporate job, and I was looking for stuff to do, and someone told me about SPX. I think the first one I went to was like 2000 or something like that. And 2001 there wasn't a show, and then I think it was either 2002 or 2003, maybe it was 2002. I said, maybe I'll volunteer, take a 2-hour shift at registration, and then I decided to go to one of the meetings with the executive committee, the then executive committee, and without getting it, because I could talk about this for another hour, but we don't have that time. What eventually happened was I was approached to take over SPX. Because of my corporate background, because of the things that I did. So my first year as executive director was 2011. And I am now, well, actually, I surpassed being the longest running SPX executive director 9 years ago.
Well, congratulations.
This is my 13th one that I have done. It's fantastic. Matter of fact, I'm now, I also, besides being executive director, I'm in charge of the website. So I've been doing all this web development stuff that it keeps because what I did in the corporate world is I had a staff of like 50 programmers working for me, programmers and managers and support staff and things like that. And so we develop large scale computer systems. So getting into the web world kind of keeps my techie genes active, as the case may be. So I've been, doing this for a while, and between 2002 and 2011, I was a volunteer. I would help out. I wound up doing various tasks, and I just did more and more. I, was in charge of the exhibit room and stuff like that. And I'm the one who found the Bethesda North Marriott as the place to go, because the Holiday Inn, where it was in downtown Bethesda, was being reconfigured and it wasn't going to fit our needs.
Right.
So, but somewhat parallel to that, I guess it was around 2007, 2008, I wanted to do some volunteer stuff. And I knew this gentleman who had this very large collection that is now at the Library of Congress. So I was able to go ahead and be approved as being a volunteer down there. And they don't take everybody. It was an honor to be selected down there. And so I've been, in fact, I was just there last week. So as part of the Library of Congress volunteer staff, what I do is I catalog political cartoons. So I look at these old political cartoons, literally from, I'd have gotten by a book on the Warren G. Harding administration because I knew nothing about that. So I take these cartoons and I go ahead and I put historical background, any pop culture references, which there are, artistic references, poetry, all of that kind of stuff. And then I also put in what the cartoonist was trying to say through the cartoon and translate any idioms that may have occurred. And that goes into the Library of Congress. So I've done that for a long time. And so I had done that for a couple of years, and I noticed that their collection basically stopped in the 1990s. This is like 2009, 2010. And so I approached them about, well, there was this SPX thing over here, and they have all of this great art. And there's the Library of Congress over here, which loves to get great art. So the issue was not, could a deal be struck? It was, could a deal be struck for this? It was, how was the deal going to be constructed? And it took about a year. It's the federal bureaucracy and stuff like that. And we worked it out so that there's now the SPX collection at the Library of Congress. And every year we donate all of the IGNAT submissions to them. And we have a team of, normally it's anywhere from 4 to 6 Library of Congress staffers that come through the exhibition hall at SPX asking for donations for the collection. And this particular relationship is unique. There is not another relationship like it in the world that I'm aware of, that a comic show of any kind, superhero, indie comics, really doesn't matter, or a pop culture convention for that matter, has a major institution like the Library of Congress, basically picking up stuff as it's coming out.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, there's now about 10,000 items in the collection. Well, the thing is that the way a lot of these museums and other larger institutions work is normally they wait for someone to either donate or sell their collection. It may be a creator who has a large archive and all this stuff is in it, blah, blah, blah. This is the first time that I'm aware of, and I've done the research about this, that as we go along, we're collecting the stuff as it comes out. And the reason for that is that the Library of Congress understands the ephemeral nature of mini comics in particular, mini comics and prints, because a lot of people, as you know, they'll print up 100, 200 copies and that's it.
Yeah.
It's totally gone. So we focus on things of an ephemeral nature and also things that don't come to the Library of Congress as part of copyright submission. So for instance, there are a number of Kickstarters out there that they have not gone ahead and sent registration copies in, but we pick them up as a matter of course, either by donation at the show or by submission for the Ignatz Awards. So, that relationship, and it's really cool because now, I mean, I'm aware of the past, over the past like even 2 or 3 years during the pandemic, they were using the collection for different things, either exhibitions, or they have, for instance, members of Congress or congressional staff will request to see stuff at a Library of Congress on a given topic, and SPX stuff gets put into that mix. We've had displays in the first floor of the Jefferson Room where they have these large cases out there, and it was all SPX stuff. So they view this very well. They love having the material, and the good part is they've done. A lot of people say, "Well, I don't like paying taxes." Well, okay, fine, and I get that. But when it comes to federal taxes, I don't have a problem because I know a whole bunch of that is going towards preserving the SPX collection at the Library of Congress. Okay. In fact, when we first started this, they didn't have the right kind of acid-free envelopes to keep the mini comics, and they special ordered them. They had them made just for the mini comics. They had people in the conservation part put together special boxes for some of the special material that we've got. It's unbelievable, and it's stored in vaults that store the same stuff that you would see in a museum collection. So, all the preservation stuff is there. It's kept in an acid-free environment. The humidity control is there. The heating control is there. And as I tell people, please donate to the SPX collection at the Library of Congress. We will preserve your works till the sun goes supernova.
I love it. And thank you for walking us through that. I definitely, as time passes, right? And, I go back and look at like when I started with this podcast to now, I start thinking of, what's changed, the sort of archival, the sort of preservation component, whether it be in storytelling or even the subject matter within the stories. Like I can look back into 2019 when I started this podcast and look like, oh, wow, that place doesn't exist that we spent 20 minutes talking about is gone. So being able to have someone's work documented and, it be comics, it be something that has things that are very referential to a certain time. It's the idioms you mentioned. It's great to capture that. And, that's one of the things that I've been looking at working through, as I was telling you a little bit before we got started. I'm working with a, group of students, and the whole subject matter, it's a library. It's a library for this community that I'm in. And I'm like a person that was one of those kids that grew up in this area, now coming back nearly 40 and being able to contribute in that way. I definitely, it's really great to hear that that's that sort of connection that, SPX and the Library of Congress has. That's really great.
It's, like I said, it's unique, and it thoroughly validates any of the work coming out of the indie comics community. And I'll never forget the first SPX. There was a guy who was selling, I love these handcrafted mini comics that have special packaging, or it's really clear that it was handcrafted.
Yeah.
And I went up to this gentleman's table, and I had already seen his stuff before. I go, look, can I go ahead and get 2 of these for the Library of Congress? And he fell back in his chair. He was like, you are kidding me, really? My work in the Library of Congress? I was like, yes, your work in the Library of Congress. So, and I've gotten that reaction many, many times. So there's this historical preservation aspect of it, but there's also the emotional aspect of it. So yeah, it's a very cool thing.
No, that's wonderful. I have my own really, really, really janky, non-professional version of that at my own home. Like I'm recording from my home studio currently, and I have items like folks will send me stuff, and it definitely feels precious. I had one artist, he took my logo that you can see in the background as we're recording, and he turned it into a small diorama, and he does this work that are in these small Altoid tins, and he recreates things. And I'm like, did you create like Operation in an Altoids tin? How did you do that? Or scenes, pop culture scenes. And it's just really cool. And I'm very selective of what I keep in this space, because I think there's a creative energy there to sound really hokey about it. But to the point, not everything goes in there for something as small as my little place, but something that has the backing of like that sort of like, air, and it's the US, Library of Congress, that I would imagine any artist, any creatives, like, there you go. So it's on the resume, it's on the artist statement, it's there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And understandably that there have been times, like for instance with the risograph stuff, and it's expensive to produce, and it's totally understood that it's like, I only made 6 of these and I really need to make my money back. And so, stuff like that comes up, but that's totally understandable. We totally get that. So sometimes there's some stuff we'd like to get our hands on, but because of financial circumstance, we totally understand that it's not a viable thing to occur. Although that diorama does sound cool.
It's super cool. I'll send you an image of it a little later. So let's shift gears a little bit into sort of the impact right around the Small Press Expo, within the indie comic community. Like we're touching on a bit there as far as the relationship with the Library of Congress, but like sort of what has been like some of that additional impact in conversations, or just in what ways like people look at like SPX, like, and again, I was there like last year, and it was funny. Like I ran into Keith Knight, I ran into James Spooner, and I was able to get some interviews out of that and connect, and it was like really great. And I was like, I'm coming back every year. It was a little what it was for me, but I was very new to it. So as far as being in the role that you're in, what has been that sort of impact?
Well, first, Keith and I are old friends, and he's staying at my house this year for SPX.
That's great. Dr. Keith Knight, as he reminded me.
Right. Dr. Keith Knight. No, although there were those of us that we just roll our eyes at that attempt at pretension. Especially as somebody who's like addicted to lobster rolls. Okay, how pretentious can you be? So there are actually 2 things that when you look at the scale and scope, one of them is SPX's influence as just having an SPX. People came from New York and Toronto and London, and they saw SPX and they said, we need one of these for our city. And so to me, there's, whether it's in art or comics or even festivals, there is no greater compliment than to be an influence. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we were a deep influence that way. The other thing that is a big impact is the Ignatz Awards. When people write up their little resumes for either their books or on their website and stuff like that, they always talk about the Eisner Awards and the Ignatz Awards. And the Ignatz Awards have proven to be both a stepping stone and a prestige item within the indie comics and publishing industry. Because you see people kind of come through SPX, get discovered, and all of a sudden they're at First Second or Random House or Abrams or wherever it may be. Raina Telgemeier is a classic example, she came to SPX and sold her mini comics for like 50 cents or $1. And this is the same person who has had, New York Times bestsellers. So that now another area in which SPX is interesting, and I can't speak for the other shows, but at least before the pandemic, I can't speak because I haven't run into anybody since then. We would get people from the animation studios from the West Coast come to SPX looking for talent.
Mm.
And there are, by my count, at least was probably 15 to 20 people who used to exhibit at SPX that are now out on the West Coast, either doing development deals or working as animators or working as production designers or working something like that. So SPX was the stepping stone in that direction. Another place is commercial illustration and the New Yorker. People like do you know Lonnie Millsap?
Yes.
Okay, so Lonnie, been coming to SPX, and he's a great talent. I love him, and he's a big basketball fan on top of that. And so he's gone to the New Yorker and a number of other people. We've had New Yorker cartoonists come down and be special guests at SPX. So that's another world in which there's a certain amount of discovery that occurs. So those are the big areas where SPX itself has been an influence, and then you tack on the Ignatz Awards, then you tack on different creative communities coming into SPX looking for talent.
Yeah, I can even speak to, going there last year, I was able to get maybe 3 interviews out of folks that I've talked about. I bought a bunch of books and stuff when I was there, and I was like, hell yeah, this works. And, I got connected to, I did the interview with Keith, and then I got connected from Keith to Liza Donnelly, who connected me to an interview I did in New Orleans. And I was just like, this is, 6 degrees of separation. And
Right.
It's really cool. And it almost takes a bit of the sort of vetting work out of me. It's like, oh, I did this cool interview with this person. They're saying this person might be a great person. Let's check it out. And it just really works. It really works that way. And I can root it back to the Small Press Expo as a part of that whole equation and trajectory.
Yeah, and once you know one person and they like you, then they'll do that. As you can tell, there's this big network out there. As a matter of fact, Liza was one of the people I visited on that road trip I referenced earlier. Her and her husband, Michael, they've got a fabulous collection of works just from New Yorker cartoonists. It was a real treat going up there. But yeah, once you get in, the community is very nice and very, very tight, and there are less than 6 degrees of separation, especially if you send me a note, I can make it 2 degrees of separation for a lot of cases.
Well, notes will be coming your way. If I'm being honest. So I want to talk about your background. I mean, I was seeing a few different things, Eisner Award-nominated comic author, historian, curator. There's a lot of, interesting things about you as in addition to your data background, your IT background, which I didn't see on it at all. So that's even greater. So what sparked that initial interest in comics for you? And could you tell us a bit about your sort of journey in comics?
Well, when I was a real young, 3, 4, 5 years old, my parents would get me the Dell comics. But what truly triggered it is when I got my tonsils out, my parents gave me my first Superman comic. And that led me down the road to perdition. That's the one that hooked me. And so starting as, there was in junior high school, there was one guy there that was selling me his adventure comics. So I got into Legion of Superheroes, and I would go up to the newsstand with another buddy of mine, and he turned me on to, I didn't know about Marvel comics until I was 14, because my neighborhood in New York didn't carry any of them. It was all DC stuff. And so I had a Horizon expansion with my buddy John. He had at the time a near complete set of Marvels. And so I read everything, and I became a huge Fantastic Four fan. So I put together my own collection, which regretfully I had to sell in college. And also by the time I got into college and through college, the superhero stuff had kind of lost its appeal to me.
Mhm.
And so I got into the underground stuff. I still have all my underground comics. I got into indie comics, which was a little later in the 70s. But then, I wasn't really the collector I wound up to be until later, because when I got into the corporate world, my sister said it best. She said I disappeared for about a decade. And so I only went to, from was probably in the last 2 decades of the 20th century, I most probably only went to maybe 3 shows.
Mhm.
Okay. But I started up again, to put the collection together I have now. I started focusing on um, books. I started collecting books, cartooning books, the same way an antiquarian book collector would collect books. So I'd go after signed editions, first editions, editions and dust wrappers and stuff like that. So I've got a really good collection of that stuff. And I've got the undergrounds. And then at SPX, that was a Horizon expansion. And I started collecting a lot. In fact, I've got one of the things I do collect. I collect some mini comics. People have much better collections than me. But what I collect is I collect comics on tabloid newsprint.
Mm.
Okay. So you've got things like here, you've got a Secret Prison. You've got a whole bunch of things that have been done in the DC area over the years. So I've got a large collection of that material. I've got lots of first editions, lots of stuff signed to me as part of SPX. Another thing that expanded my horizon, I went into a bookstore. I was just out of college at that point, and I just used bookstores were a totally different thing back then than what they are now. You can't even find them now.
Right.
Back then, it was a joy to go in, and when you went to the comic or humor section, you had no idea what you were going to see, which made that exploration really interesting. And I pulled down a book. It was the third New Yorker album from 1930, and I loved it. And
Yeah.
I went out off in that direction, and then there was other stuff that you would run across going to the used bookstores that if you didn't go in there, you wouldn't have found, because the mainstream stores didn't have that kind of stuff.
Mm.
So there's like an aggregation. And then there were some people that I thought were historically interested. So I've got pretty decent holdings of stuff by Winsor McKay and Will Eisner and Harvey Kurtzman. And do you know E. Sims Campbell?
No. Mm-mm.
Elmer Sims Campbell. Well, you know about Matt Baker. So he was the first, attributed to be the first successful black cartoonist, comic book creator in the 1940s.
Yeah.
A decade before Matt Baker even came along, E. Sims Campbell was the first black cartoonist / illustrator to be successful, and he was doing cartoons for the humor magazines of the day. He had commercial accounts. He was very successful in what he was doing. And while he was doing this, and he had a syndicated strip that went through King Features Syndicate. And while he was doing this, he was also doing cartoon strips for the black newspapers in New York.
Wonderful.
And so I've got a bunch of his stuff. I've got, I think, all of the covers he did for the old Life and Judge magazines and other stuff. I've got 2 books signed by him. So so there are people like that I kind of went after that I felt were historically important. So I've got that aspect. So I look at it also as a historian.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and when I get into like sort of expo convention season, and when I go, I think this will be the 3rd convention / expo that I've gone to this year, and I'm kind of looking for just, all right, who's about to pop? Who can I actually have this conversation with, and who am I going to buy something from? And because it's like, again, it's going to be something that I'm going to try to get signed. And I want to protect it. It's not like I'm going to read this like in that moment, or I'm going to get a secondary copy because I want the side one to be, crisp in a way. But definitely having some of those things that re-spark that interest. The other day, it's not necessarily related, but the other day, I could tell that with all of the things that I'm doing and the sort of minimal like downtime that I have, I was able to log into, the library website, the central library here. And I was like, webcomics, where are they? And I started like reading, maybe like Spider-Punk. And I was like, I'm using my downtime to explore this comic. And now when I go somewhere, I have a trade. I have a trade paperback in my backpack with my recording gear. So it's like, yeah, I'm getting to this time. I'm in my pop culture scene. I'm in my this season, and I'm just ramping up for just being around and being in conversations with folks like you, and folks that are artists, and folks that are writers, and folks that are like champions of comics and that form.
And by the way, what you just said reminded me. There's one other thing we do with the Library of Congress. I totally forgot to mention. We actually archive webcomic sites.
Wow.
So
yeah.
So, in fact, this guy, James Kacholka, his diary comics, the entire run of his diary comics was on a server that was about to be decommissioned. And he sent me a note, Warren, can you help?
Yeah.
And we got the Library of Congress. And so there's now a copy of all of his stuff down at the Library of Congress. And we've done that, like the nib is being backed up. The SPX website is being backed up. So there's a digital piece to what we're doing there, because these web comics can't, they're there for now, but you have no idea how long they're going to be there.
Right.
So we do it for that stuff also.
Yeah, I have a few installments of the nib in the studio that was given to me as a gift, and when I saw, because it was on the radar, I wanted to have this sort of arc of who can I speak with in these different sort of places, because I wanted to, like, I try to stack, like, all right, we got some comic writers, we have these different publishers and so on, and I was like, circling, I was like the nib, I was like, I like their style, like what they do, and then it's just like, okay, it's wrapping up. I was like, but
well, you should. I would recommend, like, Matt Bors is coming to SPX. Okay, and so I would recommend talking to him, because I've known Matt since, oh my God, I got his first mini comic. He was like, I think he was 21 or something like that. So I've known him for a very long time. So I've been talking with him through his entire journey with the nib and the different iterations it's gone through. And he would be able to give you a good feel as to what it's like to run a site like that in this kind of a media, media milieu.
Got it. I'll put that note. That's great. So let's see. I got 3 more sort of like real questions, and then I have like the rapid fire questions.
Okay. All right.
I have for you. So, is there a pivotal moment or experience that, comes to mind when you think of your journey? I mean, I see, the Eisner Award nomination. I see, as you touched on earlier, the historian component. It's great. It's a lot that's in there too. Like if I'm answering this question in the scope of what I do, yeah, I've been podcasting for close to 15 years, and I can't think of one. I just think all of them are cool, which sounds so hokey, but also I feel that too, because it's a new opportunity. But what comes to mind for you as a pivotal moment during this journey for you?
Well, there are 3 of them. Okay. Sure. So one of them was, of course, being nominated for an Eisner Award. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You're making this up. Okay. So anyone who doesn't say that, I don't care if I win or not. Most people don't get nominated. All right. So it wasn't a problem if I didn't win. It was like, I got the nomination. That's fine. I'm happy. So that was one of them. The second one was the first 2 shows that I ran at SPX were special, and it's both ways. The first one is we had Antel Ness and Roz Chast and Diane Newman lead a slate of mainly women creators coming to SPX, that we had this emphasis just on the women, which up to that point, no show had ever done. Yeah. But then the following year, I was able to get Dan Klaus, Chris Ware, and the Hernandez brothers to all come to the same show. And that to me was like an absolute mind boggler. There was a third one when we did the Fantagraphics 40th anniversary show. We had, it was unbelievable. We had a brunch on that Sunday, and there's a photograph of like 24 of the top Fantagraphics creators all in one photograph. Ed Piskor was there, Simon Hanselman, Charles Burns, the Hernandez brothers. It was unbelievable who was in that room. It was absolutely mind-boggling. But the other one that blew me away must probably be even more so than those, is being on Cartoonist Kayfabe. Okay, the Ed Piskor, Jim Rugg channel. I did in fact, I was the first person. It was an honor for me. I was the first person they interviewed when they started up the channel. Yeah. And I went up to Pittsburgh, and I thought I was going to sit down with the two of them. They go, no, Warren, you sit over there. And it was like I was being grilled, like I was in some kind of job interview. Okay, they started throwing questions in, and that one is still up. And so every time I come into Pittsburgh, I would do a couple. And what happened was it thoroughly shocked the hell out of me. Okay, that the comments section was like, "Oh yeah, Warren. We want to see more Warren, stuff like that." And the ultimate compliment was after SPX in 2019, Jim and Ed came to my house to do a video tour of my collection. Wow. A very brief one, which, by the way, you are hereby invited to come over to my house for a tour of the collection. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And so we did this video, and I would like break something out, speak about it for 2 seconds, and move on to the next thing. And for the first year or two, is 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 views. It's now up like 25,000 views. And last year at SPX, I had two people come up to me and say, Warren, I love the work that you're doing on Cartoonist Kayfabe. One guy wanted me to sign his program. I'm like, no, I'm just some schlump, okay? I got, I'm just some guy. I don't have, no, Warren, I really want it. So, I signed it, okay? So, I go up once or twice a year to Pittsburgh, and I have the honor of sitting with Jim and Ed. I've done about 30 videos with them on all kinds of different topics, everything from, we did Master Race, and and I was very happy they allowed me the privilege of talking about my favorite superhero comic of all time, Fantastic Four 48 through 50, The Coming of Galactus and the Silver Surfer, which to me, okay, try and beat that. I don't care. You're not going to do it. You're not going to convince me. All right. So there's been this wide range of stuff that we've talked about in terms of comics. We've done Concrete. We've done Little Nemo. We've done Will Eisner. We've done a little bit of Chris Ware. There's all kinds of, like I said, 30 different videos we've done. And that to me is a surprise, an honor, and a shock.
It's so great. I'm marking out a little bit. Yeah, it's like I know these people. I know these names. I have stuff. This is great. So actually, I think that and you made my job a little easier in sort of that response. One of my secondary questions has been answered, so that's great. So now I'm down to sort of my last question, and I think I have a sense on it, but at least want to kind of use this to close out the sort of real part of the interview before we get to the rapid fire part, which is what I've been told is the BS part of the interview. For folks, coming out, what can they look forward to? I mean, I'm on the mailing list. I get the emails from you. But what can folks look forward to this year's XPX?
Well, we've got a great slate. Mara Naomi is coming, and Bill Griffiths, Zippy the Pinhead. His Ernie Bushmiller graphic novel biography is coming out about 3 weeks before the show. So we'll be one of the first shows, if not the first show, to go ahead and have it debut at SPX. I can't get into the programming panels because even I don't know what they are yet. It's like typical management. It's like, well, you're in charge, but you don't really know what the hell's going on down there. Okay. So we've got, I think it's 22 programming panels and I think 11, 12, or 14 workshops, and we'll be announcing those sometime next month. So that's all done. The Ignatz Awards are going to be on the Saturday night of SPX, and the nominations are percolating now out of the judging team. It's going to be our normal. How about this? So I did a back of the envelope calculation. If you spent 3 minutes at every table at SPX, you would not be able to watch any programming, go to the bathroom, or eat for the 14 hours that we're open.
Wow, packed.
So there's a lot to do. So just getting through the floor is a lot. Once again, we're going to have Fantagraphics coming back, and Top Shelf, and No Brow, and Self-Made Hero, Silver Sprocket. So the big indie publishers are going to be with us once again, and they always bring additional just so everybody knows, there are other guests that come to sign at those tables that aren't SPX special guests.
Right.
So and I have no idea who those people are, because they, I always get something from, Top Shelf or Fanta, whoever it is. Like last year, I had no idea that Jeffrey Brown had come to SPX at Top Shelf's table. I'm like, why didn't you tell? I was like, Jeff, I had no idea. I spoke to Chris. I was like, Chris, you're supposed to tell me when someone of that stature comes. So there's a certain amount of surprise that even I have no idea what's going to happen. Okay, so that kind of encapsulates what's going on for this year's show.
I'm so looking forward to it, and I think I'm going to switch up, because last year was like the first, and I was like, I don't know how to navigate this. I'm just trying to like feel it out, but at a point, like you touched on, like people are super welcoming. It's a different sort of setup than I've been at before. It's like, hey, I can chat with folks and it doesn't feel like I'm interrupting them from something else. It's like, no, hey, yeah, absolutely. And, it's really cool. So I think what I'm going to end up doing this year is kind of like maybe do the overnight thing. I was there for a couple of hours last year and moving to sort of my next stop. But this is going to be more of a, concerted effort to really get dipped this year.
And it's one of those things that one of the big differences between our show and the mainstream superhero comic shows is that when you ask for an autograph or ask for something to get signed in a book, they're not going to charge any money. Mm-hmm. Okay, and this goes to the very top people, and so that's and as you say, the vibe is different. As you see, there are no cosplayers. There, everyone is just kind of hanging and milling around, and everyone is approachable.
Yeah.
So it is a totally different vibe.
That's what I dig about it, and I am super excited. And it's always, even outside of doing this podcast around it, when there's things that I like, I am an evangelist for it. I never stop talking about it. It's like, pull up, guys, Bethesda, here we come.
Well, thank you. Well, how about this? I'm so glad you came in. I'm so glad you liked it.
Loved it. So this is the part of the podcast now that I want to hit you with these rapid fire questions. You were talking earlier, feeling like you're in the interview setup. This is going to be more of a goofy version of it, but
okay.
But I think you'll dig it. And but as I tell everyone, don't overthink it. Whatever your answer is your answer. So I have 6 of them, because I've been typing while we've been talking. So it was 3 initially, and now it's 6. So that tells you something. All right, here's the first one. If you could hang out with any fictional character, who would it be? Any fictional character, who would it be?
I'll be honest with you. I'll say Superman.
Okay. This is funny. What's something that's pretty ordinary that you're very snobbish or particular about?
Crab cakes.
You get it. So you get it right there. That might be the end of the podcast right there. You get it. As a proud Baltimorean, what is your favorite color?
Blue.
Yeah. Go-to comfort food, the second food question of this group.
Go-to comfort food. Well, pad thai is one of my comfort foods. I like a good burger is a comfort food. Pizza is a comfort food.
I like it. I mean, I hear the Northeast accent, so I'm like, yeah, pizza.
I was born and raised in New York City. You can take the boy out of the city, but you can't do the opposite. So,
do you have a favorite movie? And I know the favorites are always when people get caught, like, depends on the year, or what have you.
Oh, geez. Well, the Blade Runner would be one of them.
Good one.
Godfather, parts 1 and 2. When I was a little, I'm sorry. Well, one of the ones I have to admit from this is when I was a little kid, the original Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston.
Nice. This is the last one I got for you. I asked someone this yesterday, and I thought it was really funny because I like to troll baristas sometimes. I'm like, yeah, can you put enough cream in there that makes it look like my skin color versus, and they look at me. It's usually, I like to troll. What is your go-to coffee order? Are you a coffee person? What's your go-to coffee?
No, I don't drink coffee or tea.
Oh, really?
No, I don't drink coffee or tea or alcohol. It does not mean that I don't have other vices that shall. Well, no, it's legal in the state of Maryland now. So yes, I do have one vice.
I love it. It is legal. Well, that's actually it. You're off the hot seat of the rapid fire questions. Yeah, you made it. You made it. We survived. So I want to one, thank you for coming on to this podcast and spending some time with me. We made it. We made it happen. And despite trains not cooperating and all of the things, and two, I want to invite and encourage you to share with the listeners where they can check out, SPX, anything that you want to share in these final moments as we close out of this podcast.
Yeah, all the information is up on our website, www.smallpressexpo.com. So go out there. Everything is there. It's all on the front page. It tells you all of the, you click on the box and here's the special guest box. But a lot of it is going to be announced in about 2 to 3 weeks. So more details are going to come out by the middle of August. There's going to be a lot of information on the show.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Warren Bernard from the Small Press Expo for coming on and sharing a bit of his journey with us on this podcast. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.